Hi, everyone. We're just waiting for Senator Peter Whish Wilson to reconnect. We were talking just a moment ago. There he is. Thank you.
G'day.
That was a bit nervous. We were talking for 10 minutes and then all of a sudden you left the screen. Thank you so much to everyone who is following us live, and also, of course, to those that are following the replay. We're really pleased to be presenting some Ozpol information in this new, more video-based format, and of course, really pleased to be welcomed by a very special guest, Senator Peter Whish Wilson. Welcome to you, Peter.
G'day. Thank you, Denise. I really appreciate you having me on, and good on you for having a crack and doing something a bit different. I hope this takes off and we'll see a lot more of it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. From frustration, innovation springs. Let's put it that way.
Indeed it does.
But as I said, thank you. And for those who are listening in live and, of course, in replay, just want to tell you that I did ask the Senator if I could call him Peter before we went live on air, just so you don't think I'm being presumptuous. So thank you. So just to get us started, and we'll be talking for about an hour about all things Ozpol, but just to get us started, Peter, if you can tell us what brought you into politics and a little bit about your role with the Greens.
Yeah, thanks, Denise. I suppose you could say I'm an accidental politician. Politics is something I never saw as a future career for me, and indeed, to be completely honest with you, over a decade ago, I wasn't politically engaged in the broader sense. I was at a local level. I suppose that two big things happened to me. Firstly, I turned my back on an old life, which was working in Sydney in the rat race as a banker, as you know, and decided I wanted to have a tree change. I'm both a greenie and a very passionate surfer. And I was lucky enough to have my parents living on a beautiful farm in the Tamar Valley in Tasmania. So I planted some grapes on that land, left my job, took my kids and barely willing wife at that stage down to Tassie, and we started a new life. And I enrolled at Charles Sturt University to study viticulture and relearn science from school and get myself acquainted with my little piece of land, although technically it was my parents' piece of land. And I suppose sort of 12, 18 months into my ideal lifestyle that I'd built for myself in Tasmania, I found myself embroiled in a god almighty community environmental fight against an extremely aggressive corporation in Guns Limited. And they were going to build one of the world's biggest pulp mills next to our farm, and they were going to dump 30 billion litres of industrial waste at my surf spot. So I had two reasons to get active, and I kind of wanted to get away from stress and pressure and grow my own food and get back to nature. But I quickly figured you can run but you can't hide. The problems of the world are everywhere, and I stood up as a community leader. And in the fight against guns, it was a difficult time. They were a highly litigious company. It was very, very divisive and combative down here. And I suppose I'd seen a different world to some of the people down here, and that took 10 years. 10 years of my life, to be honest. It totally consumed me and my family. I worked in my vineyard, and did a bit of teaching at uni, but didn't have any income for that period of time, and was a full-time campaigner. And at first, I didn't want to join a political party. I wanted to stay independent and be a local, because I saw how divisive the political element of Tasmania was. But after I met Bob Brown and others and realised that they were in there batting for me every day, and all the other people that I was fighting with, I ran as a I joined the Greens. So that was just over 10 years ago. And I ran as a candidate for them in 3 different elections in a short period of time, including for Christine Milne in the Senate in 2010. And I still didn't have any aspirations to go into politics. It was very much part of what I was campaigning for, to beat guns and save my valley and my community and stop 4 million hectares of native forest, old growth wild forest being destroyed, having got the ocean polluted. And we won. Ironically, when Bob stepped down, a lot of people said, "Well, you throw your hat in the ring. We'd love to see you, going to Parliament, and it was one of the most stressful moments of my life when that came up. I really remember having a knot in my stomach of almost, fear and tension. I was like, I've got a great life now, like I've worked really hard, and guns is going to the wall. They went bankrupt when I went into Parliament. So what was I fighting for? It took me a couple of weeks to realise that what I'd seen in Tassie, it's just a bigger scale in federal Parliament, the excessive corporate power. You use the word oligarchy a lot, Denise. These vested interests that rule the roost in Canberra, it was everywhere. And I had already been part of a marine conservation group. That's what I did a lot of my campaigning for. So, I just kind of took on a bigger fight on a bigger scale, I suppose. And the Greens were a fantastic party to be part of.
So you moved
still are.
Yeah, still are. You moved to Tasmania for a tree change and get away from stress, and now you've ended up in the Tasmanian Senate in the Australian Parliament. I mean, especially in the current
that's right.
In the current sort of landscape that we find ourselves in 10 years. I mean, it's stressful enough watching it as we do, let alone being part of it.
Yeah, it's something I think about a lot. But the same reason I got into campaigning, and it would have been really easy to step back and let other people do it. I think I'm the kind of person that would get more stressed sitting at home feeling powerless, like I wasn't doing anything or taking any action. And it's something that I've learned, and I know Bob Brown talks about it a lot. Taking actions like you're doing with setting up these podcasts and alternative media, it's one of the most positive things you can do to stay optimistic, stay on track, and take action. And I suppose I'm doing that on a bigger scale now, and it's a real privilege to have a chance to change things. That's not a throwaway line. It's true. I think I probably would have got sucked up into a giant black hole of negativity if I wasn't doing this job.
I've often said that this part is my therapy. I don't want to not be engaged because I feel like you have to be looking at what they're doing and what's being done in our name and with our taxpayer money and so on. But I couldn't do that unless I actively did something like this and keep my sanity. So to me, it's a small step. With the word "small" is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, but it is a step.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how big that step is. Everyone counts, and it counts from a big picture point of view, and it counts for the individual. And I know we've got to finish on an optimistic note to this, but it's that theme is it's essential. It's critical to my story, as it is to many other people I know who are activists. It's the best way to stay sane and get where you need to go without kind of tripping over and not being able to get up.
Exactly. So your role with the Greens now, and I did note last week you all started to refer to yourselves as shadow minister. We'll get into that a little later, but tell us about your role with the Greens now. What's your specialised category?
So look, my passions are still very much oceans and climate, and I'm doing a lot of work in that area and have been strategically for well over a decade. And a lot of it's still bridges with corporations and the impacts that they have on our environment and on our society, because every environmental problem, whichever way you look at it, ultimately is the byproduct of a business decision, and so therefore it's an economic problem, which makes it a political problem. I was the first politician in federal parliament. This might sound very bizarre now in 2019, but I was the first politician to talk about plastics in the ocean back in 2012. In fact, it's the first speech I gave in Parliament. And now it's recognised one of the biggest environmental issues on the planet. The damage it does to ecosystems, to animals, to protected species. There's one of many things that I've been working on. But my other role in the Greens, apart from, campaigning around the country on ocean issues, is economics and treasury. I don't like calling it treasury because that's kind of a very, classical term for it. But, we are trying to transform our economy and build a future, what we say is a future for all of us. And that means also taking people with you and taking a certain approach to talking to people about, their community and how that bridges into the economy. And I've done a lot of work over the years on a whole range of different portfolios, from small business through to working in finance, working on trade deals, opposing trade deals, I should say. I think now we're very much into the core of, to use the want of a better term, to building a new Green Deal kind of approach to offering a solution for people that they can follow and that they can get behind and understand, and how we might actually provide a pathway for change. It's been an incredible amount of work, I'll be frank with you. This kind of thing for us as a party, people don't vote for us on the back of economics and on the back of the work we do in these big portfolios like Treasury. It's a third of all the legislation that comes to the Greens in Parliament. It's a lot of grunt work. We get very little political payback for a lot of the work we do. We're very proud to have led on a lot of big reforms in this country we were hoping to see, like it's scrapping negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions as just one example. We've been doing a lot of work over the years trying to lead the debate. We've got some great outcomes in Parliament, working with all political parties. Multinational tax avoidance, we were the first ones to kick that off. Had some great legislation around cracking down on corporations not paying their fair share. We've got a levy on the big banks. You may not know, but I was one of the original people to lead on getting a Banks Royal Commission in the first place. That journey started for me 5 years ago, and it took me a couple of years to get Labor fired up on it. And I'd like to think we at least put capitalism on trial during that Royal Commission, and some good things will eventually come from that. And I could probably rabbit on about competition policy. We've got an effects test to help small business against big corporations. The theme's very much taking on excessive corporate power. That's where I've been focused, and I think we've been very effective as a small, nimble party, very focused, and we've been change agents in a lot of ways that I'm really proud of.
And hearing some of the issues that you just raised, I mean, you're exactly right. They are issues that Labor have either got behind eventually or also been on a ticket with you on. I mean, the effects test is something that I know that the Labor Party were also speaking about. The Banking Royal Commission, of course, has been something that both got behind. The question, I suppose, now we have about the Banking Royal Commission is, what are the outcomes going to be? Does it just get pushed, swept under the carpet and left? I noticed last night that APRA are now making it easier for people to get home loans. Of course, the news cycle picks that up and puts that as a good news story with low interest rates. But meanwhile, people like me are screaming at the television saying, this can't end well.
No, that's right, and it's a bigger issue around what's happened in the media, and in recent decades they've become very retail focused, as they were with the tax cuts last week, Denise. As you know, it's almost like they were egging on those tax cuts from a month ago, and not just the Murdoch press. Obviously, I don't know which one's a chicken and egg between the Liberal government and Murdoch press, who's leading who, but they're basically one and the same thing, in my opinion, on most things. But I think the broader media were also, it seemed to be offering a very one-sided view on those tax cuts. It's been very hard to find. There's been a few experts quoted in print media in recent times, but it's been very hard to find a balanced view on that. And we obviously had very strong views on those tax cuts, which were based on a lot of evidence from very credible stakeholders and experts. Yet, do you think we could get covered at all? Well, no, we didn't. We didn't get covered anywhere, and it's very frustrating. But when we get back to Parliament and we get to estimates, I'll be able to face off against the head of APRA, as I will with the Reserve Bank and others, and they're very qualified people, and I know they must be aghast at their political masters telling them they now need to undo a lot of that good work. Those risks are still very much there, and we haven't learnt the lessons of history if we go down that road. So at least we'll be there to hold them to account.
Absolutely. I feel like at the moment, on so many levels, history is screaming at us to be these very real trigger markers that are there, if you're looking, to take more seriously. And it's really frustrating that, the media, who we rely on to be the fourth estate, to be that pillar of democracy, seems to be really ignoring a lot of these. You mentioned the coverage of the tax cuts. There's an article in Crikey today that actually looks at the media's coverage of tax cuts and finds it
Ooh.
incredibly important.
I haven't seen that yet, but I'll be very interested to look at that, because Crikey, obviously, Crikey, Saturday Paper, The Monthly. Interestingly, The Project did a pretty good coverage of it, but there wasn't many that I could see that I would have thought, well, they should at least provide a counterpoint. It just seemed very much like, and I've got to be honest, I was horrified when I got home on Friday from Parliament in Tasmania. 14 print articles in the 3 newspapers here praising Jackie Lambie for her deal, which wasn't a deal, but that's another matter. Not one mention of the risks that the finding $158 billion in the budget are going to pose to Tasmania. And the news was even worse. There was 10-minute packages, quoting and praising her, from Andrew Wilkie through to the Speaker of the House, through to the building industry, even the social services industry were being quoted. And I'm like, wow, where's the foresight? Where's at least trying to provide a balanced coverage and a balanced approach to this? It's not there.
It's not even, to me, it's not even balanced. It's just factual.
Yeah.
Particularly on economic matters, science-based issues, and so on. Just give me the facts. That false balance, I think a lot of our media is really guilty of that. I mean, a huge part of our media also clearly has agenda underpinning its editorial focus and its editorial.
My word. Yeah.
And it really is, to my mind, impacting our democracy in a really negative way. And the tax cut coverage is a really good example. When you follow independent media and you scratch below that surface, then you have the time and the interest to look. It is absolutely all there. The independent economist outlook, the think tank outlooks, and so on. But then when you see the coverage in mainstream media, which the majority of Australians trust and follow, the mismatch is incredibly damaging. And then you can see the impact, the further down the road impact of that on our voting outcomes, on our views, and so on. It's just such a huge problem to me.
It's a huge problem, Denise, and it's kind of in the context of some other things that I think are happening, and how you unscramble that egg, I'm not really sure. But we've seen I think we've seen the decline of the fourth estate, and a lot of that's come from funding. Not having a whole different focus on journalism. You've seen the interaction with technology and collectivism, and how important it is to have catchy titles and go down that, almost, it's like retail politics, retail media, to get eyeballs on screens. And I think you've seen the rise of populist politics in Australia and all around the world in the last decade, but especially in Australia in the last 5 or 6 years. And I've seen that with the huge turnover in the Senate. A lot of the independents, after they've left the Palmer Party, I mean, Lambie's a classic example, through to the same Fraser Anning in One Nation. When Fraser Anning's speechwriter said to him, and it became public, if you don't say something extremely controversial, you're just not going to get covered in this media landscape. So he comes out and talks about the final solution. I mean, that's an epitome of what I see happening in politics, and it's not just in Australia. You've got endless scandals in Parliament. You've got leaders and prime ministers being knifed, constantly. And what it's done is created this really troubling distrust and disengagement from the institution of politics and Parliament. And then with that, really, I think that poor quality media coverage, you absolutely have a recipe for disaster. And I know you wanted to talk about the election and what went wrong. Not many people have talked about that broader that broader context of what we'd Burmese.
Yes.
I used to have 2 Burmese cats a long time ago. Yeah. People don't really talk about. You wonder why Bill Shorten and the Labor Party couldn't sell their a mandate for change for some of their reform. Well, personally, I don't think they did a good enough job doing that anyway. But they were doing it within this really concerning, bowl of broth where people just don't trust politicians. They're disengaged. They think we're all bullshitters and we're all in it for ourselves. you need to go that next step to actually convince them that, you know, you're there for the right reasons, and this is what they should be voting for. This is why they need to vote for change. And it absolutely provided the perfect storm, Denise, for fear and scare campaigns.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, following the election campaign was incredibly challenging. We talk a lot on Ozpol, and this might be a little bit controversial, but I can't think that our current government, I can't regard our current government as being legitimate based on how they won government, because democratic processes and values have to mean something. And they exploited every democratic loophole that is there. When the rules were written way back whenever, I don't think that people thought that we had a government that was literally going to lie to hold on to power in the way that the current government did. Of course, media disruption and the challenges that the media landscape faces and the disruption that we're currently seeing in governments around the world, there's no coincidence to my mind that that's happening at the same time, because the media is a vital pillar of our democracy. We have relied on the Fourth Estate to inform us in a truthful and balanced way based on journalistic principles, and those principles have fallen away. There are glimpses. I mean, we saw this last night on the ABC from Four Corners.
I was about to say the ABC are often an exception to that rule, but not always, but
not always. And we understand the internal and external pressures that the ABC has been under, and it does so. And all of that, I think, is having an impact on the political landscape we're in. But we also have a government that is not a conventional government. In terms, you know, normally when there's been a change of government, you've thought, okay, you know, it's a government. I don't agree with everything that they've said and done, but you know, I know that the majority of time they're going to have my best interests at heart. With this government, I don't think any of that. I actually think they frighten me. I think they're very dangerous to us in our future. And again, I think about words like oligarchy, authoritarianism, neoliberalism, even fascism, and can see that we are, all evidence just points to the fact that we are well down that path. And I think that it's something that we have to all be really concerned about. As history shows us, you know, you don't just arrive at those places, you build up to those places. And it feels like that we're very much again down that path, to the point, as we said, that what happens in the day-to-day at the moment is no surprise once you understand what those core themes mean and what this very unconventional government is really all about.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of soul searching myself since the election. Like a lot of progressive people in this country, I was shocked on the night. And interestingly, Denise, a couple